Hi, my name is Maureen. I'm a librarian with the Cedar Grove Line Avenue Branch Library of the Shreve Memorial Library System. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a fashion accessory that is very in right now, the humble scrunchie. Some of us may remember this from the 80s and 90s, but it is definitely back with a vengeance. If instead of buying scrunchies for the people in your life, you want to learn to make your own, this is the tutorial for you. And the best part is there is absolutely no sewing involved with this particular version of making a scrunchie. In order to make our No Sew Scrunchie, you need a couple of different materials. So the first thing that we're going to start talking about today is the fabric that you're going to use for your scrunchie. You can use any fabric you have at home. Bandana, old t-shirt. If you happen to have fabric lying around from making masks last year, that's great. If you don't, what you can do is I used what's called a fat quarter. It's a funny, weird name, but what it is it's a sewing term for a particular cut of fabric. In this case, the fabric is 18 inches by 21 inches. So the 21 inches is the perfect length to make an adult size scrunchie, and the 18 inches of width means that we can get several scrunchies out of the same piece. Fat quarters are super cheap. Mine was like $3 or $4 back when I bought it from a craft store. Normally they're going to be very cheap. You can buy them either in single patterns or sometimes they'll be in a set with a couple different patterns, so you can make coordinating scrunchies in a couple different patterns and colors. So that's my fabric. Once you get your fabric, if you're using a larger piece, you're going to want to make sure to cut it down. You want it to be about 21 inches long and 4 inches wide. This is going to be an adult size scrunchie. If you are making a scrunchie for someone who's younger, you may want to experiment with the length of it, maybe make it a little bit smaller. The way that you can tell with the adult size scrunchie how long the fabric needs to be is the fact that we're going to also use elastic. The elastic is going to be 10 inches long. The fabric, like I said, is 21 inches long, so it's about twice the length of the elastic. If you're making a smaller scrunchie for a smaller person, you want to make sure that you also scale down the size of your fabric. So you've got your 10 inches of elastic, you've got your piece of fabric that's going to be 4 inches wide, 21 inches long, and then the next thing that you're going to want to grab, if you have some at home, great. Otherwise, again, super cheap at the craft store. It's called a couple different things. Sometimes you'll see it as hem tape. Sometimes you'll see it as the brand name Stitch Witchery. The other thing that you sometimes might see it as the technical term, fusible bonding web. Fusible bonding web is pretty simple. It's just glue in solid form that when put between two pieces of fabric and heated up with an iron, it sticks and it's washable. So it's great for this project with scrunchies because if it gets wet, it doesn't matter and you don't have to sew it because all you have to do is heat it up with an iron. Once you have your fusible bonding web, like I said, you need to heat it up with an iron, so you're going to need an iron for this project. If you have a steam iron, that's great. Make sure you do not use the steam setting. Something about the water from the steam interferes with the glue. You're just going to use it without water. On the back of your package of bonding web, it should tell you directions for what setting to use. Mine says to use it on the wool setting, which is a lower setting to medium setting, but your package may say something different. If the instructions for pressing differ from what's on the back of your package that I mentioned, you just follow the directions on the back of your package. In addition to your bonding web, your fabric, and your elastic, you're going to need some scissors, a safety pin, a sewing pin or straight pin, a towel. The first step when making your No Sew Scrunchie is to look at what kind of fabric you have. My fabric is a lightweight cotton print. It's very cute, but the thing about it is that if you look here at the edges, you can see that there's these little bitty threads coming off. That's called fraying. It's something that happens a lot with cottons and certain other fabrics. If you use a knit, those don't generally fray. So whenever you look at your materials, you need to figure out, is this something that I need to go ahead and protect the edges now before I get started, or is it going to be okay over time? If you have a knit, you can skip this first step, but otherwise what we're going to do is we're just going to fold in either side over here so that we can kind of make a hem and protect those edges in case they fray. So I've already done this side over here, so I'm going to repeat it on this section and show you what we do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to flip it to the wrong side of the fabric. When looking at fabric, it has two sides. It's very easy to tell which is which when you're looking at a printed fabric, because one side has the nice pretty print on it with my little cats. That is going to be the right side of the fabric. The side that does not have the print on it is the wrong side of the fabric. So we're going to flip it to the wrong side, and we're going to take our fusible bonding web or hem tape, and what we're going to do is we're going to compare it to the width of our fabric, and we're going to cut it just slightly smaller so that there's no glue peeking out of the edges. Alright, and now that we have it cut, we're just going to fold the edge of the fabric in over that bonding web, and then we're going to take our iron and we're going to press according to the directions. The directions on my bonding web says to put it on the wool setting with no steam and press for 10 seconds. Very important, they say do not slide your iron. If you need to move it, you just pick up your iron and move to the next spot. Alright, so check to make sure it's fully adhered and it looks good to go. So if you had not already done the other side, you would repeat the process. But since I've already done that, we can move on to the next stage. And if you have a fabric that's not prone to fraying, you're going to start with this next step. Once you have done both sides, just made a little hem to protect it from fraying, or if you have a non-fraying fabric and you've skipped this step, what you're going to do is you're going to flip it over so that the right side is up again. And now we're going to start assembling our scrunchie. We're going to take our bonding web again, and just as we did on the sides, we're going to measure it out, and we're going to cut our bonding web just slightly smaller than the fabric. And this time we're going along the long edge. You want to leave it slightly smaller than the fabric so that there's no glue sticking out, because sometimes as the iron melts the glue in the bonding web, it causes it to spread. We don't want glue sticking out or getting stuck to our iron. If you end up cutting it a little too short, you can just cut another small piece and just kind of layer it on the ends. So now that we've got our bonding web measured and cut, we have put it along the top part of our fabric. And now we're just going to fold the bottom edge up to meet the top edge. And it's going to go right over that bonding web. Make sure that the bonding web is below the line of the fabric, but still close to the top, because you want to leave, like I said, a little bit of room anytime you use bonding web so that if the glue spreads out, it doesn't get all over everything. I'm just kind of smoothing it out and making a crease. This is very easy to do with my cotton fabric. If your fabric wants to slip and slide and move around, you may want to pin this down so that it doesn't move. And again, right before I press anything, I'm just making sure that the bonding web is in the correct spot. And now we're going to start ironing. So what you do is you put your iron down for 10 seconds. And then you pick it up and you move it along. You do not slide your iron. Once you have pressed it down the whole way, you're going to go along and you're going to check and make sure that it is sticking the whole way through. Sometimes on the ends you have to push it again, because since it's towards the back or the front of the iron, sometimes it doesn't quite get the right amount of heat. Alright, so the next step in making our scrunchie is we're going to take the tube that we've made, because in case you can't tell, that's what this is. It has a little opening on either end, and it's a tube of fabric. And And there's several different ways to turn it inside out. The way that I find works best for me is to take a handy dandy safety pin, put it at one end of the tube, secure it so you don't poke yourself, and then you're going to take the safety pin and you're going to put it inside the fabric tube, and you're just going to start moving it along, and you're going to pass it through all the way, and that turns it inside out. So you're going to move it down, and you can tell it starts to scrunch up. So as it starts to scrunch up, you will need to help it turn itself inside out by using your finger to pull the bunched fabric behind the safety pin taut, and that kind of turns it inside out. So it's just going to be a slow process. All right, there is our safety pin, and so we're just going to keep doing what we did where you grab onto it and you pull, and there it goes. And voila, you can see the right side of our fabric once again, and you have a little tube. As you can tell with my cotton, it did get quite wrinkly in this process. So if you would like, you can go ahead and you can iron it again just so everything is nice and neat, or you can just kind of move on. It takes like 2 seconds to iron and it makes everything look so much neater. So I'm just going to go ahead and all nice and neat. You're going to take the safety pin out of the end of the fabric, and the good news is that was actually the trickiest part of this whole process, is trying to get that fabric tube turned inside out. So now what you're going to do is you're going to take your elastic. As a reminder, again, my elastic is about 10 inches long. That is a teen or adult size scrunchie. If you're making it for a small child, you may want to do 6 inches. Keep in mind, it's not actually going to be 10 inches long in diameter when it's finished, because one, it's going to be round, and the other thing is you actually have to tie a knot in it, and that's going to take up some space. So we're not actually going to have a 10-inch wide scrunchie. So we put our safety pin through the end of the elastic, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a sewing pin and I'm going to pin the other end of my elastic, the one without the safety pin, to my towel. And the reason why we're pinning it to the towel or your ironing board or whatever you can find is because it keeps the elastic from getting lost. The elastic is about half the size of your fabric, and the reason why is because that's what gives the scrunchie its scrunch shape. But unfortunately, that does mean it's very easy to lose the elastic as you start moving it through. So we're going to take the end of the end with the safety pin, and we're just going to take it and feed it through the tube of fabric. And so you can feel the safety pin on the inside, and you just kind of use your fingers to move it along. And as you keep going and it starts getting to the point where the fabric is now longer than the elastic, it will start to make that distinctive scrunchie shape. So now that the elastic is all the way through the fabric, all I'm going to do is just kind of even it up a little. Whoops, and see, it pulled my elastic right out, but no worries. I can feel the head of the pin, so I'm just going to grab it and pull my elastic back out the other side. All right, so we want it to be kind of even. We're gonna bunch it up a little more. And oh, the bonding web on this end is coming undone a little bit. So let me press that down real quick. There we go. All right, so take the two ends of your elastic, remove all your safety pins and your sewing pins. Push that back up so I don't stick myself. And you're going to take the two ends and you're just going to tie a knot. And I'm going to double knot it just to be a little extra secure. And I'm going to cut the ends off of the elastic. Just to neaten it up some. All right, so now you've got your elastic, you've got the basic part of your scrunchie. How do you get it closed? As you can tell right here, this end of the fabric wants to slide inside this, and so that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to line them up like that so it looks nice and neat. To close it up, you can either hand sew it, or if you truly want this to be no sew, you can take your bonding web again. And I'm just going to go around. All right. And again, make it slightly smaller than it needs to be so that no glue is sticking out. And then you're going to take your bonding web and you're going to slide it right inside the edge here. Once you get it in, go back around and make sure that it is totally inside the fabric, that there is no bonding web sticking out. Sticking out a bit there. There we go. All right. And now you're going to take the iron and you're going to press it on both sides in order to secure it. And I find that because there is more fabric there at the ends where we've already formed a hem, it just takes a little bit longer to bond than it does on the main part. So I normally leave it more for like 20 or 30 seconds. Alright, so pick it up, check and make sure that it has fully bonded all the way around. If not, press it a little bit more. I'm going to trim up some little fabric bits right here. Alright, and there you go. You have a scrunchie. I would let it cool completely before you put it to the test. It's still very hot. Once it has fully cooled down after the ironing, it should be good to go. You should be able to wash it as well as wear it, and you have a homemade fashion accessory.